Week 0 was a great appetizer for Week 1, which will be a scrumptious main course served up this coming weekend. And here to give us some best bets on that is Mackenzie Brooks. And Mackenzie, this is one of the best Week 1s I've ever seen, and certainly one of the best Week 1 matchups that's ever happened when we're talking about #1 Texas taking on the defending national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes, in Columbus. Everybody will be watching. What are you looking for?
I don't really want to lean towards a side here. I think the total is the way to go with this, and take the under 47.5. Believe it or not, this line was like 50.5 back in July, so you are definitely seeing some action on the under. The Sportsline model has it projected for 45, so you still get some value there. But I know we want to talk about Arch Manning and Julian Sain and all these things. These defenses are also phenomenal. Yes, Ohio State loses a lot, but they're like a plug and chug type of team. They're going to reload here. They're going to be just fine. So I think both coaches don't want to put their new quarterbacks in the deep end here. I think for Julian Sain, they just don't want him to turn the ball over. That's how you lose to this Texas team. So I think we'll see a lot safer football, maybe a little less exciting than everyone's going to want to anticipate with this game. But I still think the under, while you can get 47.5, is worth the play.
Going to be very interesting to see how Arch Manning looks in that game. People are either going to love him or they are going to be so critical if he has a bad game against Ohio State, who always has a great defense in Columbus. LSU and Clemson, speaking of great games, LSU's lost 5 straight openers, and they're starting with a road game against a top 10 Clemson team that so many believe is going to be in the hunt for a national championship. Who do you like in this ball game?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like LSU is due to win a Week 1 game here, and I'm going to back them here with the plus money. I don't want to say I dislike this Clemson team. I think the brand name carries them a little further than it should when I think of this Clemson team. And, I do a lot of looking at past data. I know there's some transfers here, but again, it is Week 1. We're going to see a lot of similar things that we did see last season. That's a team that lost to South Carolina at home. That's a team that lost to Louisville. That's a team that lost by 31 to Georgia to start the year. They don't beat quality opponents, and I would like to give them their flowers once they do, but I think the world of this LSU team. I think they're certainly alive, definitely to cover the spread, but I think LSU could go in and shock the world and beat this Clemson team outright.
Boy, that would take a lot of heat off their head coach, Brian Kelly, who certainly had his fair share from the Bayou Bengals during the start. As you see some of the numbers in that game, the number up to 4.5 now for the Clemson Tigers in the Battle of Death Valley. The great matchups don't stop on Saturday. Then we go over to Sunday. We've got Notre Dame, Miami. No Jimmy Johnson, no Lou Holtz, but plenty of talent on both sides for these teams.
Yeah, I mean, this is another team, Miami, that I'm just honestly not high on. I don't like their win total. I think they're being overhyped as well. I mean, I'm a former Carson Beck backer, so I know one knows him more than me as a Georgia Bulldog. There's so many things for this team to figure out. They lost all of their receivers, literally their top 5 receivers. They've either gone to the NFL or have transferred out of there, and you have this whole new system here. It's crazy to me to think that this is going to be some walk in the park here. So I definitely like Notre Dame in this game. We want to call it a Miami home game. There's no such thing as a Miami home game. Notre Dame will travel. I will tell you that. They will definitely be in that stadium here. I look at Notre Dame, CJ Carr, dual threat quarterback. You have 2 of the best backs in the country on that Notre Dame offense here. So could Miami figure it out throughout the year? Sure, but I just have a lot more trust in this Notre Dame offense right now than I do Miami.
So many great games in Week 1. In your eyes, what is the best bet for week #1?
It's the Notre Dame money line for me. Like I'm out on this Miami team. They have to prove it to me to see it. I just think they have so many things to figure out offensively. You have Carson Beck coming off the Tommy John surgery as well. I don't think there's any home field advantage for this Miami team in any way, as I just mentioned. So I think I go with all these plus money plays. Notre Dame, I like the LSU money line as well. We might as well start off with some plus money winners here in Week 1.
All right, Mackenzie, as we wrap things up, the American public needs a last-second college football future bet to jump on. There's just enough time here. Okay, Week 0 withstanding, Week 1 about to begin in a matter of days. So where are you looking? What are you looking at, and where should everybody go?
I'll stay in the ECC here. I'll go with the SMU Mustangs over 8.5 wins. I think people have a bad taste in their mouth after what happened to them in the playoffs. Lucky for them, the regular season is not played in Happy Valley in January weather. Kevin Jennings can play just fine in that regular season. We forget that he didn't even start the first few games. So you have this skewed record and these skewed stats here without him even starting. This is a team that averaged 35 points in FBS last season, and that included 2 13-point stinkers, and they still averaged that many points. They even bring in transfers. This is probably the best transfer performance we've seen from this team, especially now in their ACC days. So I think they're alive to beat Clemson. I like them to beat Louisville. They have a lot of great games. They're at home on their schedule this year. So I think they could win the ACC championship. Maybe you sprinkle on that, but definitely hit over 8.5 wins.
They came very close to doing that last year. And of course, they're one of the best stories in college football, making it to a cover. We have actual games to discuss. You see the week 0 scoreboard from yesterday. A couple ball games coming down to the final couple of drives. And of course, we've got games to look forward to in week number 1. A memorable week 1 on tap. And here to help break it down is Brandon Marcello. Brandon, that one week 0 game, before we get to week 1, Iowa State, Kansas State, that was one everybody was talking about, an actual conference game for the Cyclones and the Wildcats, and maybe the most unpredictable conference in college football, the Big 12. What does the win mean for Iowa State going forward?
Well, to me, the reason why Iowa State won that game is because they've got more of an identity than Kansas State. They know who they are. Matt Campbell's been able to develop that program over the last 10 years into something that just when it comes down to clutch moments, they're going to be able to pull through. Rocco Becht, the quarterback, did it last year, and he did it again in tight spaces and in crunch time against Kansas State. So because of that, getting an early season win against a contender like Kansas State is huge because later down the stretch, Kansas State's going to probably be better than what they showed Saturday. So big win for Iowa State. They got to build on this, continue to get a little bit better, especially offensively in the pass game. But I really like Iowa State still to be in the hunt for the Big 12 championship game after this win, getting it so early in the year.
It's a tough game to watch in the first half because it was such a wet field, bad conditions. Nobody could hold on to the football. The passing game was inept, but at least we had some spark in that second half and a big win for the Cyclones, as you mentioned. I don't know if there's been a more heavily hyped week 1 matchup in my lifetime, and that is Texas-Ohio State. And, of course, a lot of the hype will be surrounding the starting quarterback for the Longhorns, Arch Manning. Is it too early? Should we expect some bumps and bruises this season for a guy who, again, was not the main quarterback a year ago?
Well, listen, every quarterback has their lulls in a season, so let's put that out of the way. Let's not overreact if Arch Manning has a quote-unquote off game here and there, because every quarterback does. Having said that, Arch Manning has proven in the past that he's up to the hype. He's performed very well in spot duty. I mean, there's nothing more difficult as a quarterback than to be pulled off the bench and inserted to the game for 2 or 3 plays and then pulled back off and then put back in a game. And Arch Manning, that was his role last year. I don't know if a lot of people remember that, and he performed so well. That's why there's a lot of hype, because if he's able to perform as well as he did on a moment's notice, imagine what he can do as his lulls. Everybody does, but the ceiling is incredibly high, and more importantly, he's got a
much college football at all still think that because he's a Manning he can't run, that this is a different Manning. This is a different mold. He absolutely can run. He's very athletic. To the other side, in Ohio State, defending national champions, there's always high expectations in Columbus, but it should be noted they lost a lot. They lost a lot in terms of players and even personnel. So what's a realistic expectations for the Buckeyes?
They're still going to contend for the Big Ten championship, obviously. They've got the depth. They've been recruiting so well throughout Ryan Day's career there. So this isn't something where you're going to say, well, they're going to take a step back this year. I think a step back for them this year would end up being a 2-loss season in the regular season. And that 1 loss could happen early here in week 1 against Texas. But remember, Texas is number 1 in the country for a reason. They're the deepest team in the country, the most talented team in the country. Ryan Day has built a roster here that is deep, and they're going to need, I think, a little bit more time to get accustomed to each other, especially along the offensive and defensive lines this season. Also, remember, Ohio State's not just losing a lot on defense, but they're losing their top-tier running backs as well, and they've got to replace them and get them up to speed. And then also have a new quarterback in Julian Sayin, who hasn't played extended playing time at all in his career. So Ohio State might be a slower starter than a lot of people are expecting, but they're still going to be in contention for a national championship and Big Ten title at the end of the year.
So we covered some of the storylines. We gave some of the background. Now the thoughts on who actually wins this Week 1 Clash of the Titans.
I'm going to lean toward Texas right now because I like that they're a little bit deeper, a little bit more experienced across the board at this point. I know everybody goes, well, Arch Manning hasn't really started a game yet in a big-time atmosphere. That's true, but he has started games in the past. He has come off of the bench at times and has performed very well in every single circumstance. I also like what they've been able to build at Texas along the defensive front. Over the last 3 years, it just seems like they have generational player after generational player, and then they just step up over and over and over again. I love the pass rush that Texas has built with Colin Simmons there. They're going to be really, really good from the get-go and the start. Ohio State, I think, is going to need a couple weeks to get up to speed. This is a coin flip game, though, being at the shoe, but I'm going to go with Texas winning a tight one at Ohio State.
All right, let's talk about the other Goliath matchup in week number 1, and that is LSU and Clemson. LSU's won a lot of games under Coach Brian Kelly. But you have to remember he's followed 3 coaches that won a national title, brought a national title to Baton Rouge. So obviously there's a lot of pressure. They've lost 5 consecutive openers, LSU has, not all under the direction of Coach Kelly. But at the end of the day, where do you see LSU? I mean, is this truly a top 10 team? Is this a team that can compete for high prizes?
Oh, absolutely. They have a top 10 roster. They have a top 3 quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, in my belief, in the nation. But the issue for them is going to be week 1. Have to go on the road against Clemson, who I think, to me, is maybe one of the deeper rosters in all of the country, and you have to play there on the road. But what's going to keep LSU maybe on the fringe of being a top 10 team, potentially at the end of the season, is that schedule. You're looking at it right now. Going to Alabama and going to Oklahoma there in the final month of the season. I know everybody wants to look down on Oklahoma after last season, but the Sooners are going to be really, really good this year. Remember, they beat Alabama late last season when they hosted them. LSU in a similar spot there. Difficult schedule for LSU. They might end up being a 2 or 3 loss team this season, but being better than what their record shows. But week 1, critical for them going into Clemson. But as you said, they have not done very well in their season openers, no matter who the coach is. And I would argue in that 0-5 stretch here, this 6th game is the toughest one yet.
Clemson did not do very well in their opener last year, but this might be Dabo's best team, best roster in several years. So what's the ceiling for Clemson this year?
The ceiling's to win in the national championship for Clemson. To me, what they've been able to figure out, one, as much attention as the quarterbacks have gotten there, DJ Uiagalelei, then Cade Klubnik coming in. The issue for me, the reason why Clemson has struggled is because they haven't had a game breaker at receiver. I think they have finally developed that over the last 2 years. And this season, they're going to be as explosive as they've been in almost a decade offensively because of what they got at receiver. Defensively, they're deep across the board. They're going to be fantastic there. They're going to be a top 10 defense this season. Offensively, I think we're underselling them a little bit because everybody's got in their mind over what we've seen over the last 3-4 years with the quarterback struggles and mostly the receiver struggles. Again, I can't stress this enough. The reason why they have struggled offensively because they haven't had a game breaker at receiver. They have several right now, and we saw that late last season. Clemson is going to contend and maybe win that national championship this year.
And a veteran quarterback to go with those game-breaking wide receivers and Cade Klubnik, no doubt about that. All right, so again, we've kind of framed it for you. Who's going to actually win this game, LSU and Clemson?
This is going to be another tight one, and the reason I say that is because I'm a huge believer in Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback for LSU. I think he's going to be able to pull them out of some tough situations. But again, they're on the road. This isn't a neutral site game. Most of those games LSU's lost in the season openers have been neutral site games. This is going to be in a completely different environment. Brian Kelly might joke around and say this is Death Valley Junior, comparing it to his Death Valley at LSU. But if you ever played a game at Clemson, it is one of the toughest road environments in the country, and you do so with a fan base that knows they're primed to win a national championship again this year, and they have a deeper roster than LSU, in my opinion. I've got Clemson winning this game and beating LSU for LSU to lose their 6th straight season opener.
Wow. That's going to make for a whole lot of headlines and a whole lot of anxiety over there on the Bayou. Let's talk about another ACC team in Miami. Carson Beck, it's so easy to forget 2 years ago he was brilliant with Georgia. Last year, a major step backwards. Then the injuries. How does he do in year one with the Miami Hurricanes?
Carson Beck got too much criticism for the numbers he put up last year. And the reason why I say that is because Georgia's receivers were bad last year. They led the nation in dropped passes. Carson Beck cannot catch the pass for you. He cannot drop the pass for you. That's up to the receiver. The reason why Carson Beck, quote unquote, struggled is because his receivers were just plain bad at Georgia. He's got a good group around him at Miami. It's a lot of new pieces offensively for Miami. I see that. I know that. But I went down there this spring, watched some spring practices with them. Carson Beck was not able to play because he was still healing his arm. But the receivers there and the plan they have with Shannon Dawson, offensive coordinator, I'm a big believer in. Also, this offense is going to look a little bit different from what we saw last year under Cam Ward. And by that, I mean, I think Miami is going to throw the ball down the field a little bit more often with Carson Beck than they did with under Cam Ward. Cam Ward last year was phenomenal, but he did so a lot on the run, creating and extending plays. I like what they've got designed around Carson Beck. And also, Mario Cristobal has shown me some numbers. It's very much like a Moneyball approach, right? He looks at the numbers comparing Cam Ward's production at Washington State to what they did at Miami. And then also Carson Beck at Georgia and how he fits in the scheme and everything with his stats. And it was almost like a mirror image of what they're expecting out of Cam Moore's production to Carson Beck's production. It's just that Carson Beck's going to do it a little bit differently. And they saw 2 years ago at Carson Beck at Georgia what he's capable of when he has receivers that can catch the freaking ball. He didn't have that last year at Georgia. I think Miami is going to not only be an ACC contender, but a national championship contender this year.
Well, everybody loves a redemption story. If Carson Beck can light it up in Coral Gables, that would certainly qualify. Of course, Miami's opponent, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, that'll be a Sunday tilt. And they have announced their starting quarterback. It's C.J. Carr. Do you like the call? Do you think he'll end the season as the starter?
I do like the call, but the reason I'm worried about that is because it was a legitimate quarterback competition between him and Kenny Minchie, and no one was expecting that in the summer, let alone a week into preseason camp. And the reason why it was a legitimate battle is because both struggled. Both turned over the ball. Both threw interceptions. Both had some miscues in reading routes. That concerns me big time, no matter who the quarterback is going to be. But the fact that C.J. Carr, the de facto starter, was struggling worries me. Remember, they lost their backup to Syracuse in the offseason because the backup at the time realized it was going to be C.J. Carr. Well, if he struggled and yet another guy in Kenny Minchie steps up and challenges him, that gives me pause and concern here for Notre Dame early in the year. But the Irish have a credible stable of running backs that are going to be able to carry the load. Jeremiah Love is phenomenal. You saw him in the playoff, just a great running back. But my question is, if it comes down to crunch time and you need to count on C.J. Carr to deliver 3 or 4 passes down the field for you, can you trust him to do that without making mistakes? This preseason, he struggled with that.
Yeah, and of course, Riley Leonard was so good for Notre Dame in the clutch last year in South Bend. All right, with all that being said, some quick thoughts on the game itself. Notre Dame, Miami, who winds up winning it?
I think with both teams, I've got questions around, obviously. Miami, a brand new roster practically offensively. But the thing that concerns me most here actually is C.J. Carr and that offense for Notre Dame. I think they're not going to be very explosive in the first month of the season. That's going to really hurt them on the road in Miami. And for me, Miami is going to be able to score points even though it's got a bunch of new pieces around them because they have a lot of veterans, guys who know how to win and pull things out offensively. And defensively is the key for Miami. They were historically bad last year, and they pretty much booted everybody that was bad off that team and reloaded through the portal through some great players. And then also got a credible defensive coordinator in Corey Heatherman from Minnesota. I love his scheme and what he's doing there. If they're just a little bit better defensively, they're going to win some good games this year. I like Miami to win this game in week 1 and put themselves on the map and show that they're a real-time contender by beating Notre Dame, the national runner-up from last year.
All right, of course, if that happens, the guy we talked about earlier, Carson Beck, would certainly be a big reason why. Brandon, very exciting time of the year. Always appreciate the time with you. It's